Agboato, long life, Akabo, welcome. Adupe Ori Eglin, we thank the ancestors for their wisdom. This is part 4 of a series that I'm doing as really conversations, dialogue, and explorations of ideas I presented in a book called Wakanda is Real. In that book, I present 500 pages of documentation that ancient Africans superior to the science taught in Western academia, and by superior I mean closer to the truth of the reality of the world we live in. And so that's an extraordinary claim, and obviously it requires extraordinary proof. I find that a lot of the proof goes on deaf ears. If you look at, in particular, if you look at ancient Egyptian archaeology, there's just an incredible number of anomalous artifacts and buildings and structures that cannot be explained by the academic model that the ancient Egyptians built everything using stones to pound. To give a specific example, a couple examples this morning, but one very specific example that cannot be explained by the rock and chisel theory. And to me, if you have an artifact that can't be explained by that theory, that begs the question of, okay, what else you got? What other explanation? We need to those artifacts and analyze them from the point of view of how they were built. One of the first people to do that in a serious way was Christopher Dunn, who's a weights and measures expert, and he really took that issue and took it to way past where the bus don't run. So we're thankful to him for that effort. But what tends to happen in Western academia is when those anomalous artifacts are discovered, they're simply ignored. As Mo and Richard Thompson have proven in their book, Forbidden Archaeology, huge amounts of archaeological data that is simply locked in the basement of museums. It's shameful to say the least. But today I want to talk about this. This is my drawing of a very commonly found artifact in ancient Egypt. It's a vase. Not quite sure what vase, but these vases shaped like this were typically about 3 to 4 feet high. They had a real narrow opening here, and let me draw this so it's clear. The inside of the vase looked like that, although unlike my drawing, the dimensions between the hole and the side of the vase are consistent all the way through the vase. This excuse me. The size and the shape of the hole and the size and the shape of the bottom of the vase are absolutely symmetrical, completely. Plus, they were made from dolomite, which is a rock that's harder than granite. So dolomite today, if I gave you a block of dolomite and said make a vase out of it, at the very least you would need a electronic saw and electronic drill, and the saw and the drill would both have to use a diamond bits or a diamond blade. So it's just absolutely and totally impossible to make this with a chisel and a stone to pound the chisel. Even if you had a hammer, you still couldn't make it. All right. So the question was, how is this done? Right? if we were to make it today, I think you could use a water drill, but even a diamond bit and a diamond saw in order to cut out the pattern so that these dimensions are consistent. The tool itself would have to be guided by a computer. There's just no way to do it by hand at all. So we're faced with the fact that we're looking at items that appear by power tools controlled by a computer. Now there may have been other technologies that we don't know of that we can't even imagine, and there may be other power sources, but sorry, the old hammer chisel explanation just doesn't hold up at all, not even a little bit. On to show how the faces on the statues in Egypt are typically symmetrical within a thousandth of an inch. Again, that's just not possible with handheld tools. It just can't be done. Michelangelo, for example, it's really beautiful, it's flawless, it's smooth, but it's not symmetrical. And so in some ways it's realistic too, because the human features are typically not symmetrical. But in any case, the statues in Egypt are symmetrical, and Donna has really beautifully pointed out that the reason for the symmetry is that they hold coded symbolism, the coded symbolism related to sacred geometry. And the sacred geometry symbolized in the face of the statues is not so much to reveal the nature of the geometry, which was well known in ancient Egypt, but to specifically identify the function of the statue. So that many of the statues became containers for frequencies that contained information, and the frequencies were unlocked by knocking the statue with an ankh, which caused, not without the leg on it. It was a circle with a bar across it. In Sumerian culture, that's called the ring. It's the basis for the Tolkien mythology, the Lord of the Rings, which is based on real mythology from Eastern Europe as it moved into the Middle East. And the statues of the Anunnaki shown holding also have them wearing a little thing that looks like a wristwatch, but that wristwatch was to tune the ring to the vibration of the person holding the ring, and then that link between the resonance of the object that was being unlocked and the consciousness of the person that was downloading the information that was coded into stone. So all of that speaks of an extremely sophisticated culture. We also have in Egypt the evidence of stone old quarries, I think. If you drill into a piece of wood with a particular type of bit, when you pull the bit out, it brings a little block of wood along with it, of the wood that was drilled to make the hole, right? And so we see those same looking things, but they're stone, not wood. I mean, just unimaginable how they were made. But we also see throughout Egyptian megalithic structures the existence of perfectly round holes. So somebody who's going around drilling holes, you can't make a perfectly round hole with a hammer and chisel. Dunn also discovered this, which literally blew his mind. It made him pause. This was a piece of red granite, which is very hard, not as hard as dolomite, but a bit of a challenge to cut. He found this, and the arc of this indentation as accurate to within a thousandth of an inch. So again, sorry, no way to do that with just your old hammer and chisel theory. So those anomalies, in my opinion, require an explanation. Um, the best explanation I've seen from ancient source, Ethiopian text that describes what I would call a laser sword. It was a cutting tool made from a beam of light, and it's interesting because it describes the beam of light of, you can't turn it on or off. It's just the sword. It was a beam of light, and it was permanently in the on position. In order to create a beam of light with no external power source, semiconductor, which means monatomic metal, where the counter rotation that is normal in most atoms is replaced by the same direction rotation of both the upper and lower structure of the atom. And once you have an atom based on that structure, it inherently draws energy, free energy, out of the universe. That's the theory of how UFOs transport themselves from here to there. In other words, the metal that makes the UFO itself is the source of fuel. I mean, you look at those pictures of some UFOs and the thought that they travel hundreds of millions of miles, if not more, without a noticeable fuel tank begs the question, how are they propelled? And that's the answer. The structure of certain noble elements with a monoatomic internal structure is inherently energetic, right? And so that would explain the light sword used to cut stones. Those in Ethiopia, those light swords describe how the 7 temples that are cut in stone in Aksum were built. I think it was Aksum, yeah, Aksum. And the texts go on to say that for some reason the lightsaber wouldn't cut through grain, so they'd have to put the sword in a basket of grain, because if it's down, it would just cut through the dirt and the earth and the rocks or whatever. So it's a very specific. I could say that was made up, but what would be the point of making that up? I mean, that makes no sense. But it's certainly a plausible alternative theory to the stone and chisel theory, which again, just I'm not buying it. Sorry. So I think the final anomaly, not the final one, but the final one I want to talk about today is the fact that Robert Grant has identified 425 mathematical formulas coded into the pyramid. Academia refers to his work as coincidence. At that point, coincidence doesn't even factor in as a plausible explanation. And it's really clear that the structure of the Giza Plaza is based on pi, that it was located in the exact center of the landmass of Earth, that the size and dimensions represent fractions of the circumference of the Earth, and the height represent fractions of the distance between the Earth and the Moon, the Earth and the Sun. All those factors, you could argue you can project numbers onto anything, and that's true. But for there to be such a consistent matchup with one mathematical formula after another, and a consistent matchup with specific dimensions of the Earth itself, and I think more telling was specific frequencies within the Earth itself. It all begged an explanation. This relates to the mystery of the Ark of the Covenant, which we've seen pictures of related to Moses and the Ten Commandments. Actually, the size and structure of that ark was a common apparatus in ancient Egypt. So I think there was at least 3 similar objects removed from the tomb of Akhenaten that are photographed. You can see them there; they're clearly there. The point is this: Wilhelm Reich, who was a psychiatrist, took the biblical dimensions of the ark, which essentially is a rectangle of specific size, and the box is made between alternate layers of wood and metal. The original ark being made of alternate layers of wood and gold. I think it was 16 layers. But in any case, that shape inherently generates energy. And so the thing that's interesting is that shape is exactly identical to the sarcophagus inside the king's chamber in the large pyramid at Giza. So if you look at the temple text, you can see that what we're calling the Ark of the Covenant, which clearly had a different name in ancient Egypt, that machine was placed inside the sarcophagus as really the key to unlocking the power of the pyramid, right? And the thing that's even stranger about that, the dimensions of the king's chamber match the dimensions of the room that Leonardo da Vinci painted as the location in his painting of the Last Supper. And the thing that's even stranger is the walls in the king's chamber have kind of a rough surface, but if you look closely, some of those anomalies in the surface of the wall appear to be either symbols or some form of writing, but there's definitely a shift in the surface of the wall that was created in Egypt up here on the wall of the Da Vinci painting the Last Supper. Now, there's just no way that's a coincidence. Da Vinci lived in Egypt for 5 years and spent a lot of time inside the pyramid studying it. So he obviously was trying to preserve something, I would argue, an understanding of what the pyramid was all about, and understand that Da Vinci was one of the early leaders of the Priory of Zion, who were the group that received the scrolls that were buried under the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. They were retrieved by the Knights Templars, and those scrolls include Hebrew translations of ancient Egyptian texts, including the Emerald Tablets, the Tablet of Thoth. So Da Vinci was privy to all that, and I think he was trying to preserve and share with us some of the content of that information. I know that's what he's doing. So that's a way it's an alternative explanation to the, gee, I wonder how they did that theory of Western academia. So stay safe, Ire Ashe Tel.